What's up, everyone? David DeCelle here, your host of the Model FA podcast and CEO of Model FA. And today we are joined by Ed Kuresman over at Mai Capital Management. And quick thank you to the folks over at Street Cred for making the introduction. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them bringing us together. But I'm excited to talk about Ed. He's been in the industry for a number of years. It's part of a very large firm, and we're going to talk through a few main things outside of just his background and journey. In no particular order, we'll be talking about his transition into a larger firm and what that looks like, his experience in building teams. We're also going to be talking about some of the benefits in partnering with a larger firm for some of the shared resources and what that could actually look like. And then finally, and this hopefully isn't relevant by the time this is released, but it may still be relevant and certainly will in the future, is how to have conversations with clients during market volatility. So with that said, Ed Kuresman, he is a CFA, regional president and market leader and senior managing director over at MAI Capital Management. But with that said, Ed, welcome to the show.
Thanks, David. Happy to be here.
Well, let's rock. So, tell me about yourself. So as we think back, curious to know, like, how did you even get in the industry? Like, I've heard stories ranging from, my father or mother was in the industry and I always wanted to be like them, and all the way to I just haphazardly stumbled in and lasted long enough to find some success. What end of the spectrum of those are you on?
Yeah, so the way I got into the industry was in college. By my third major, I selected finance. And this was in the late 90s. So for those who remember what was happening at that time, it was the tech bubble that was still building. And I started taking some of my finance and investment classes, became very interested in what was happening in the markets, even on occasion skipping a class or two to follow what was going on and make some investments. And at that time, I had some savings bonds that I had cashed out, and I opened up what was then a day tech trading account, put a few $1,000s in there, started watching CNBC and following what was going on, and invested in a number of companies that you would not hear about today because they no longer exist. And that was my first lesson on circle of competence and understanding what you're doing when you invest versus just following what was popular. So I went through college becoming interested in financial markets, in helping clients, and eventually that kind of is what I pursued.
Now, when you say your third major, is that because you were incredibly smart in college or a little indecisive?
Probably more indecisive than incredibly smart. I what I found so fascinating about finance and specifically investing is you and I could both be smart people with the same information, and yet you come to a different conclusion, a different viewpoint than what I come to just based on how we go about our approach.
Yeah, when I was in college, my plan was to double major in finance and accounting, and I took my first accounting class, and I was like, no, I'm not doing that. So I dropped that and stuck with finance.
Yeah.
Um, Now, did you start your own financial planning practice as a first step? Were you part of another practice, a larger institution? Like, what was your first step into this space?
Well, David, I'd love to tell you that I was a heavily sought after new hire following college, but that just wouldn't be truthful. Um, Graduating college or approaching graduating college, and was very fortunate to have a great internship kind of the summer before I graduated. Sent out probably 70 or 80 letters, heard back from two. One response was, really appreciate you reaching out. We have no interest in hiring you. And the other one was, we'd love to have you come and visit us when you're back in town. And I wound up interning at that firm, which was called Madison Financial Advisors, that summer. And I was offered a position following graduation. And at the time, Madison was a, call it 14-month-old spinoff from two gentlemen who were senior people at a large regional bank that wanted to get away from having two bosses, the company and the client, and just work in an independent model. So when I joined Madison, we managed $20 million for 10 client relationships.
And I mean, I think there's a lesson in there where you mentioned, sent out 70 or 80 letters or applications, heard back from two. And I hear people complaining about the current job market. Hey, I'm not hearing back from anyone. It's okay, well, skill up and make yourself more marketable and reach out to more people. And that was probably a good stepping stone getting into that company. How long were you there?
So if you include my time at MAI as an extension of that, this is my 23rd year working with the same organization.
Wow. Okay. Now, so you went from an intern, and then you got hired full time. How did your role transform over the years? Like, did you start as a service advisor? Did you get into business development? Did you stay in one of those two lanes? Like, how did that evolve over the years?
Yeah, when I first started, as I mentioned, we were basically a startup RIA. I mean, there were three people, including myself, at the firm. This was in the early 2000s, so there was no margin for error. We had to be doing a great job day in and day out because the markets were incredibly challenging. And in those early days with a small firm, you wind up doing a little bit of everything. And when I say everything, it includes grabbing coffee for meetings. It includes making sure that the bathroom is clean because we weren't in a fancy office space. But the path that I wound up pursuing was more of a portfolio manager, um, working alongside advisors to research investment opportunities and construct and manage portfolios. And ultimately, studied for the CFA program and worked through that. But we did everything, and it was actually incredibly important to kind of my journey and my evolution to kind of see all facets of what it takes to kind of operate a wealth management firm. But the early days, it was all hands on deck.
Like a de facto unintentional rotational program.
Yes, yeah, and rotating into areas you didn't think you'd be rotating into.
And just for context, and then I have a question in regards to this. How long have you been partnered with MIA since the days of Madison?
So Madison joined MAI in
MAI, excuse me.
no problem in January of 2024. So we're 15 months in.
Okay. Um, so you started with 20 million when you joined, three people, including you. You joined, call it last year. What did the company look like at that inflection point of joining in terms of staff and
Yeah.
assets under management?
So we had grown the organization from about $20 million from when I joined to about $1.4 billion in assets, and evolved from three of us to about 33 people in two locations prior to joining MAI.
Seems like extremely slow growth, Ed. Just kidding.
It can feel like it.
That's
I mean, it's the lesson is you do the right things day in and day out, and if you take care of the clients, and if you act with integrity and do the right things, good things can happen.
And just for the listeners, because if you're listening to this and not watching it, you didn't see my face. I was very much being facetious in that comment. Was there any acquisitions along the way? And if
Yeah.
so, like how many acquisitions did you guys do?
Yeah. So in 2019, we made one acquisition of a local firm. Our Madison had offices in Cincinnati and just outside of DC in Leesburg, Virginia. Uh, I'd say a national client base. But in 2019, we completed our one and only acquisition of a firm called Greystone. Um, and they were about $275 million, $250 million in assets at that time. And it was as much about some of the people and what we could do together in terms of some of the things that we needed to deepen our bench on and some of the things we could do for them.
So let's call it roughly speaking, you guys scaled from, 20 to about 700, on your own, as opposed to like having 10 acquisitions and, getting up to a billion that way without any organic growth on your end. What would you attribute some of that growth to, that one M&A deal aside? Like, what were some of the marketing strategies or business development strategies that you can tie your growth back to?
Yeah, and you may hear this a lot, but I think a huge part of it was just working incredibly hard to create value for our clients and those satisfied clients, sharing our story with others. That's a huge part of it. Um, we I wouldn't say we would describe ourselves as excellent marketers. We didn't have a large marketing budget. We weren't necessarily growing through a specific niche of clientele. It was pretty broad based. I'd say uh, through our evolution, we continue um, to build out what we were doing in kind of every service area on the investment side. We started moving into private opportunities. Um, 7 or 8 years before joining MAI, we started to think about what diversification meant and how we could add diversification by being creative and looking outside of just public markets. And what we're able to kind of do at MAI is a great improvement from what we were doing. Um, but a huge part of it was I'd attributed it to our culture, which is over the life of our legacy firm prior to joining MAI and through MAI, our culture was one where people stayed, where people enjoyed working together. And I think our clients really saw and appreciated how we collaborated in a very positive way. And it wasn't siloed, it wasn't territorial. We were all working for the same goal, and that was helping the client. So I think a lot of clients just enjoyed kind of our creative but fun culture that we enjoyed what we were doing, we enjoyed who we were doing it with, and we enjoyed who we were doing it for.
So, with all that said, it sounds like one of the main sources was client referrals based on that exceptional experience and service you were delivering. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. Um, Talking about going from three to, I think you said 33. Um, that's no joke as well. That's more than one hire every single year, based on your tenure. Um, so you went from three folks who all did a little bit of everything. And I would imagine over that hiring curve, you started to remain collaborative, as you just mentioned, but also I would imagine compartmentalized roles a little bit better so people could be experts in their particular lane. So the first question around hiring is, what was that first role that you finally were able to like delegate a thing to, and take it off of all your plates?
Yeah, so as we grew in headcount, we definitely were able to get more specialized and went away from wearing 10 hats to maybe down to only 4 hats or something like that. We started to build out depth on the financial planning side, on the investment side, on the operation side, on the client service side. And honestly, that 2019 partnership that we made, that acquisition, it was pivotal for us because we wound up adding depth in every area that we were looking to, but we really, for the first time, got operational expertise to run the business and allow some of us to step away from all of the day-to-day work around operating a business. And it could be compliance, it could be fee billing, it could be performance reporting. We had more depth there, and that really allowed some of us to become more specialized.
So when you think about, I am curious just to go back specifically, like what role was hire number four, right? So I would imagine
Sure.
the three of you to start were all advisors, and I have finger quotes up because you did a multitude of other things as well. But what was that? What was that fourth hire? Was it another advisor, or was it some sort of service or administrative role?
It was, I'll call it our next 2 hires were um, advisors. Um, Probably the hire after that was our first client service specialist, where we started to leverage um, a person to actually manage a lot of the administrative components of client relationships on an ongoing basis, whether it's account paperwork, whether it's calculating and processing RMDs, whether it's money movements. We started to leverage that person who is still with us today, as are the hires 4 and 5. We started to leverage those capabilities, and that started to free us up to spend more time working with our clients and more time talking to prospective clients who are interested in what we were doing.
Some of the folks that I come across who are currently at where you were, meaning very small 3-person advisor team. The most common scenario I see is an advisor with some sort of CSA, client service associate. Um, or maybe they're just a solo advisor that I'll come across every now and again. Hiring someone, taking on that responsibility, and frankly, being a good trainer, mentor, and delegator can be intimidating, and it could be uncomfortable for them, and they start to experience paralysis by analysis. So thinking about all the people that you've hired and the experience that you and the rest of the team have in bringing on new people, what are some of the lessons or advice that you would give, lessons that you would share as you scale the team to be bigger than yourself?
Yeah, so one thing that I would share, and I give a lot of credit to my partner who hired me 23 years ago, Jim McDermott, who I am still a partner with today. He always had the attitude of prioritizing kind of long-term success for the business over short-term profitability. And that really speaks to a commitment to continuing to invest in the business, to evolve our technology, evolve our service offering, all for the benefit of making our clients' experiences better. So that was something that I've experienced from day one, which is that commitment to kind of the same way that we talk about building portfolios with a long-term mindset, right? We're investing today, and what happens tomorrow, a week from now, a month from now, that can be hard to predict and very random. It was the same approach with how our business was built, which is continuing to invest in the business. And if we do the right things, the results will be there long term. So that was that prevailing attitude and commitment to the business getting better is very much aligned with how MAI approaches things too, and we can talk about that. But we kept with that mindset, investing, evolving, getting better, growing, until we got to a point, call it in 2021, probably, where as we were looking forward and strategically planning for what the next 3 to 5 years look like, it was a natural point to say, do we want to keep building it, or do we want to explore a partnership? Because some of the things that we were looking to do required some significant investment. And it was a good time for the owners of our firm to get together and talk about that.
And that was going to be my next question is, you said you were at about $1 billion before partnering with MAI. So, I mean, depending on your fee structure, you were probably anywhere from 6 to 10 million, in revenue, loosely speaking. Um, and there's revenue there to solve some of the problems or maximize some of the opportunities that you see there. But you just mentioned, significant investment to do certain things. So I guess walk me through, because there's a lot of people who, frankly, would be pretty content and satisfied. Like, we're at $1 billion, if we just experience market growth, we'll be at two in, 7 years or so. So why partner with MAI? Like, what was the motivation behind that?
Yeah, so I mean, at that time, we were roughly $1.4 billion in assets, on our way to 2 billion. And I'd say a few things. One, operating the business got more complicated. You kind of referenced in some cases, people like to keep a more simplistic model. It's just easier. Um, our business continued to grow, and it required more time from people who are very busy serving clients, performing investment research, running financial plans. And so part of it was kind of looking at, do we want to continue carrying all of those responsibilities on our shoulders personally? Is that the highest and best use of our time? I'd also say that for firms who are kind of looking at their future and thinking about what their path looks like, probably the best time to look at a partnership is when you're in a position of strength, right? I mean, if your business is suffering, or you are stretched so thin, there are probably areas of the business that are not getting the attention that they need, and that may not be the most opportune time to kind of seek a partnership. So for us, to your point, everything was going well, but it was a gut check. And it was frankly, all of our owners and all of our, team beyond that, this wasn't, we weren't on the verge of retirement. This was something where, as we're looking at the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and in many cases, longer than 20 years of our career, it was an opportunity to say, how do we want to take this? And so that kind of got us on the journey of exploring potential partnerships.
Well, it's important what you just said, because without using these words, essentially what you said is, even though things were going well, you guys had the wherewithal to suppress your ego and say, I'm making this up for sakes of the example, but and say, you know, 50% of 10 billion is a heck of a lot better than 100% of 1.4. And we think that there could be something bigger if we have the proper backing and the proper resources to get to where we want to go. So I think that's a good reflection of your guys' ability to suppress your ego and remain open-minded when on the outside looking in, you guys are crushing it already.
Yeah, look, there's a lot of different ways to build a wealth management business, and we had already seen the value of developing a professional team that can share their viewpoints and we can get better together. There are firms out there, and there's nothing wrong with it, where it's one or two people and a lot of support staff. And that can be a good model too. For us, we wanted to be challenged. We wanted to challenge each other. We wanted to get better. And so that was the model that we were used to. So the idea of even taking that a step further, and instead of being part of a 30-person team, being part of a much larger organization, under the right circumstances, we were very open to that.
What was that acquisition process like? I know some folks can be intimidated by it because they've never done it before, so they don't necessarily know what to expect. Before we clicked record, you also mentioned that you guys went about it, in a different way than most people do. So if you can share your experience of that process and then specifically what you guys did a little bit differently that was out of the norm.
Yeah. So as our ownership and leadership team convened, we did kind of realize that what got us here isn't going to get us where we want to continue to go. And that's not just about how our firm grows, but it's looking at our clients' needs as our clients are getting bigger and the world's getting more complicated. And asking ourselves, do we want to continue to build it? Or do we want to leverage another organization's capabilities and partner? And so our firm was never up for sale, so to speak. We didn't decide we were going to go that route. So we went through, call it a 14-month journey of doing our own due diligence. And it really started with, a few of us at Madison that started speaking to a few firms and just learning more about what's going on. Because every day I'm getting emails about another organization that's chosen a partnership track. And a lot of these organizations who were partnering were impressive organizations. I mean, some really large organizations with some really, impressive capabilities. So it made us wonder, what are they seeing that maybe we have not seen yet, or we haven't kind of taken the opportunity to learn. And so we went down that journey, and MAI was one of those organizations that we talked to from the beginning. And we talked for a long time. And I always joke with our executive chairman, Rick Buonicore, that I can only imagine when he sees my number pop up on his cell phone after the 13th month of conversations and questions, what his reaction must have been. But we never felt rushed, both, our own timeline as well as the way we were treated by the organizations we were speaking to. And ultimately, through that process, determined a partnership path was the right way, engaged in further due diligence with additional organizations to satisfy ourselves that MAI was the best partner for us. And after a long process and a lot of nights and weekends as a side gig to what we were doing day in and day out for our clients, it was the summer of 2023 that we decided to move forward with MAI and shared that news with our team, in the fall of 23 and January of 2024, our whole team and client base transitioned over to MAI.
And you had mentioned something about how people typically get some help from a banking institution, and you guys did it a little bit differently. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that was a good idea or not in hindsight. I certainly have experienced working with organizations that leverage working with an investment banker or an advisor, and I see the merits of that as well. But for us, our ability to directly connect with the potential partners that we were engaged with or exploring what that would look like, it allowed us just to work very closely with those organizations without any intermediary. And again, no, certainly understand from a time commitment level, it was significant. So I certainly see why people would choose to go about it a different way. But for us, that's how we went about it, right or wrong. And I would say we were as informed as one could be by the time we made our decision, talking about anything and everything. And when you talk to people for that long about that many things, it definitely evolves to more than just the conversation around the business. I mean, through the process, you build a relationship, you build a friendship, you start to see what the future looks like working together beyond just kind of going through, a more abbreviated process. I think sometimes that can be harder to do um, if you are looking to kind of make a decision over a few months.
How did your team take it when you let them know?
So our team has been close knit since there were three of us. I mean, we are in the office, most every day. People are walking up and down the hall. We know what everybody's doing outside of in the office. So we made the decision to have, if there were six owners, 27 one-on-one conversations with each of our team because everybody's going to react differently. People might have different thoughts, concerns, opinions. And if we did it as a group, people may not feel as free to kind of express their reaction or what they're concerned about or what they're excited about. So we had those conversations one-on-one. And MAI has a great process. We had senior leadership on site shortly after those conversations to also talk to our team collectively and individually. So everybody, they heard it from their colleagues at Madison. They're now hearing it from the senior leadership of MAI. Um, and and our commitment is both to our clients as well as to our team members is what we were doing before does not change, right? A consistent experience, whether that's as an employee or as a client. But as time goes on, our expectation is there's going to be more opportunities on the client side to bring value through a broader platform, broader resources, but also at a growing organization like MAI, more opportunities to take on more responsibility across the organization than maybe what it would look like as a 33-person firm.
Now, do you think the timing was right? And what I mean by that question is you decided to make this transition at about 1.4 billion in assets. If you look back to when you were at 700, 800, do you think you could have grown faster by doing this sooner in theory, or do you feel as if the inflection point that you made this decision was really good timing? I'm just trying to get a sense of your hindsight.
Yeah, in hindsight, uh, first and foremost, I'd say there's rarely a perfect time to do this. I mean, the process can be a little disruptive, right? You're operating your firm, you're providing advice, you're engaging with clients. So to kind of take this step towards transitioning your business into a new partnership, I think most people who have done this would agree there's never a right and perfect time to do this. In hindsight, could we have grown faster? Potentially, we could have, just with all of the capabilities that our partnership with MAI has brought to us. Um, but I don't think we have any regrets in terms of that. I mean, to your point, we could have waited another couple of years to get to 2 billion or 2.5 billion. And I might have been saying the same thing then that I'm saying now. So
Mhm.
I think we're happy we made the right decision. And when we made that decision is people will make that at different times.
Cool. Shifting gears, and one of the last things we'll go through today, um, market volatility and client emotions. Um, in working with my clients, it oftentimes those conversations, because everything is so politically loud these days, the different ends of the spectrum are, well, this time is different, all the way to, yep, we're along for the ride, and everything in between. So not only do you need to have market volatility conversations in general, but you also have to emotionally meet these clients where they're at, so they feel as if you heard them and that you've empathized with the way they're feeling. So I'm curious to know, you said, you loosely got interested in the financial markets at the come up of the dot-com bubble. So you've experienced a lot of market volatility when you look back over the last 23 or so years. How do you handle those conversations?
Yeah, it's a good question. And this is a unique time. Um, the way that we think about our job is we're trying to help our clients make educated decisions. We're trying to stay objective and unemotional about what's going on. I mean, we're not ignoring what's going on, right? What's happening now, what happened during COVID, what happened during the great financial crisis. Every time it's a little bit different. It's never kind of the same repeat situation. Um, but to your point, when you do this long enough, you learn lessons along the way. So in terms of how we approach it, um, one, volatility has dialed up quite a bit, and we spend a fair amount of time reminding our clients that, from 2009 to 2024, with the exception of uh, the fourth quarter of 2018, a handful of months in 2020, and 2022 as interest rates were tightening, um, volatility is normal. Volatility can be healthy. So we've just gone through a unique extended period of time where what we were getting used to was not necessarily normal. So we oftentimes kind of look at history and try and educate our clients as to what we've experienced in the past. Um, we start with financial planning. That's how we approach advising clients. And so you could look at any environment that I've named or the one that we're in now, and you could look at someone's goals and their portfolio, and we can project it out and kind of understand, is the environment that we're in derailing you from what you want to accomplish? And in many cases, what they'll find is that their long-term trajectory is still very much intact, right? It's client specific, and the environment can ebb and flow. But we start with the financial planning because that really dictates how we think about investing and how we advise. And that tends to be a very healthy way for clients to revisit what is most important to them, how long they want to work, what does retirement look like, what do their legacies look like, charitable priorities. So we start there. And then from there, we can kind of do a deep dive into the portfolio in terms of what's going on in the portfolio. How is your portfolio performing in this environment? And I mean, the term diversification is often used in our industry. And if your portfolio is diversified in this environment, your fixed income is probably positive. Your international exposure, developing and emerging markets, is probably positive. For us, a big adopter of private investments, a lot of that is doing its job exactly as we'd like it to. And so when we have conversations with our clients about the portfolio, it's not as though everything is perfect now. And certainly there is a lot of news hitting rapidly, and things are changing depending on the day by the hour.
Mhm.
So it's a little hard to try and literally to keep up with all of that. But most advisors, MAI certainly, we're not building a portfolio for the next week, the next month. We're trying to build an all-weather portfolio that is meant to have elements of of the portfolio perform well in different market environments. And so if you are diversified right now, there should be portions of your portfolio that are holding up just fine and muting some of the volatility that maybe we're seeing in markets or in investment opportunities that are feeling the pain at the moment.
Yeah, two quick client stories, and then we'll start to wrap up. So one of my clients, their vast majority of their clients based on their demographic are, loosely speaking, 70-30. And we were talking the other day, and it was at the time where the general markets were down 6%, and those portfolios were positive again. So he'd have these clients, come in with making this up, but with clippings of all the headlines they're reading, freaking out, and he's like, "No, like you're good." And they're like, "Oh, really?" Another client of mine shared that one of their clients came in worried, and he had just asked them, "Do you think that the market will be higher or lower in 5 years?" Oh, well, higher. And he goes, "Okay, well, what you're pulling from right now in retirement is that 5 year bucket that's not correlated to what you're seeing on the news currently. And all your other assets, we don't plan to touch for 5 years. So if there's some volatility now, it's okay, right? It will bounce back, in due time. So just making sure that you're meeting them where they're at, but also weaving in logic throughout, maybe not immediately, but throughout the conversation has been helpful. So as we wrap up, Ed, one of the questions that I ask all of our guests is a book that's had an impact on them. And I ask that as a way to distill a reading list for the folks listening to the show. And the book that you chose, and I'm curious to know about the impact that's had on you, is Shoe Dog, a memoir by the creator of Nike, Phil Knight. Talk to me about why you chose that book.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. The book is an easy read, and I've read it a few times. But like what I take from that story is just the twists and turns that the journey can take you on. And like when you read this book, you'll see Nike shouldn't be here. Like the company should have never made it. What Phil Knight went through and how he hit adversity in so many different ways that at the time he'd probably say he wasn't fully prepared for. His unwavering commitment to continue finding a way to keep going. It's inspiring. It's such a good lesson. I mean, I'll have my kids read the book, when at the right time, and it's a good reminder for us as people who build businesses and grow businesses. Um, the waters are going to get choppy, and they do. And he had so many different events that should have ended his journey, and he just kept going. He just found a way. He just kept moving forward, and it's just such a good lesson. I love the story, and it's a constant reminder for me that over the next 20 years of my career, who knows, right? Like where the journey will take you, but you got to keep going. You got to be creative. You've got to be long-term focused, and it's an awesome book.
Well, makes a lot of sense earlier when you said you didn't use these exact words, but basically, a lot of people could be, happy and satisfied with where their business is at with a couple advisors and some staff people to support, maybe more of a lifestyle practice. Whereas it seems like for you, you seem very happy, but maybe not fully satisfied. It's almost like a blissful dissatisfaction because there's more in the tank. And if someone else like Phil Knight that you read about can do it, why can't you? Is sort of how I'm interpreting that.
Absolutely. And part of the fun of the journey is the people you come across that you never knew they'd be part of your journey, right? I mean, as I walk up and down the halls in our office, we've got 46 people all working together under one roof. We have fun together. We challenge each other. We help each other. You know, uh, we have offices around the country. I've been up in Cleveland a few times where our headquarters are, and it's fun to develop new relationships and be on the journey together and to help each other. So you never know where the journey's going to take you. You just got to keep going.
I love it. Well, if I'm an advisor listening to this and I want to get your perspective, maybe in a little bit more detail as to not only the transition process, but also your experience in partnering with MAI. First off, what range of advisors would it make the most sense for, just out of respect for their time and yours?
Yeah.
And then what's the best way to get in contact with you?
Yeah, so for MAI in terms of partnerships, we have partners who joined us with a business that was managing around $100 million. We have businesses that came over that were managing north of $1 billion, and we're in dialogue with firms that could be bigger than that. So our firm has gotten to a point where we have a pretty broad range of uh, of of fits in terms of size. What's more important is around the cultural and philosophical fit. There's no size that overcomes culture and philosophical fit. If we're aligned there, there's a lot of flexibility as it relates to size.
Awesome. And where can they reach out to?
Well, they're welcome to reach out to me at ed.kuresman@mai.capital.
Awesome. Well, Ed, I appreciate you joining the show. Again, thank you to the folks over at Street Cred and for everyone tuning in to today's episode. Appreciate you carving out some time to hang out with us. But Ed, nice chatting with you. Appreciate you.
Thanks, David. It was fun.
Awesome. Take care.
Bye.